everyone, and welcome to This Nintendo Life. My name is Lordnbz, and we're at episode 43. It's our E3 deflation show.
Cool down.
Post E3, our cool down indeed. And I'm joined, as always, by Bally. Hello, Bally. How are you feeling?
I think summer is here because my nose is falling off and it's quite painful.
Look, I have had to deal with that sort of stuff for many years as well. We're both in the thick of the hay fever. It's not a nice time to be alive, but, you know, it's only a couple of months, I guess, if you want to look at it on the bright side. Although it's not quite that bright when 2 months is a pretty long period of time. But you're going to be off to some hot places anyway, so it'll probably get even worse for you.
I'm off to Spain, but they don't actually have as bad a hay fever because there's fewer trees and grass and stuff like that. It's sort of so hot that, you know, all the hay fever pollen giving plants can't flourish.
Well, now you say that, but the worst hay fever I've ever had was in Spain.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, it was the worst thing I've ever experienced in my life.
Well, we're terrible. On an island, so we're in Mallorca, so it should be nicer, but we'll see.
Just stay by the sea, Bally. Just stay by the sea. Swim about.
Stay underwater.
Yeah, perfect. That'll stop it. Alright, well, enough of our preamble here, talking about holidays and things. We're here to talk about video games and kind of calm down after E3. We've played a lot of stuff. I've played too many games in the last couple of weeks, and we'll be talking about those. But before we get into that, Bally, how about you lay out the show for us?
So as usual, it's going to be what we've been playing. It's going to be some of your emails that have been stacking up, so make sure to get to a few of those. And then we are going to talk a bit more in depth about some more stuff to do with E3. So maybe some of the God, I've forgotten their names. The Treehouse Live, exactly. Some of the Treehouse Live events, and just talk about a few of the games and more the in-depth things that we noticed and want to mention.
Yeah, because our podcast was obviously directly after the Nintendo Direct or the digital event, so we were left very confused at the state of things like Shin Megami Tensei Cross Fire Emblem and Metroid Prime Federation Force, all of which have had a little bit more explanation now, and which we can kind of talk a bit more authoritatively on. So we'll get to that and have a good discussion about it, and hopefully not feel too bad about the state of Nintendo, but you know. Still things to be worried about. So
definitely.
We'll see. Alright, so I guess we're just going to jump into stuff we've been playing. Bally, how about you? What have you been dipping into?
So this E3, I feel like Rare had quite a big presence. You know,
they did, yeah.
Everyone
the
was
Microsoft
wondering,
stage.
what are they going to be making? What are they working on? And they showed this pirate game. They also announced their... What's the name of this game? It's like their anniversary, their collection. What's it called?
It's called the Rare Replay, which...
So the Rare Replay, which is basically all of Rare's games, barring some really good ones. And the few that I'm talking about that they didn't include were the ones that obviously Nintendo have the rights to. So that includes all of the DK games that Rare worked on. So I have been playing one of those games in the form of Donkey Kong Country 1.
The original.
The original. OG. So, you know, like the Donkey Kong we know and love today, this was his first outing way back in 1994. So it's kind of a seminal game in many ways. This was the creation of characters like Diddy Kong, Cranky Kong, obviously like Candy Kong and Funky Kong, but they're maybe less important.
Those well-known, beloved characters,
exactly.
Candy Kong.
Yeah,
you know?
Everyone loves Candy Kong. She's definitely going to be in Smash Brothers.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, I've obviously played Returns and Tropical Freeze and wanted to go back and play this game. I actually picked
it helps that you got this for like free or on a deal.
It was like a deal with Tropical Freeze download. I think you could buy the two of them for, I can't even remember, like £35. You get both games, which wasn't bad at the time. So yeah, I really wasn't sure what to expect from this game. I absolutely love Tropical Freeze. I think it handles incredibly well. So I was prepared that for this game to be quite janky and quite... I don't know the word, but I mean, the other 2D platformer I've played on Super Nintendo, Super Mario World, it feels good, but it doesn't feel as good as, you know, like New Super Mario Bros. In my mind.
There's even more controversy. It's one thing to say that you're not a fan of Mario World, but to call the platforming controls not as tight as.
I'm not a fan of Mario World. I'm just not as big of a fan as others are. Let's just say.
Right. Yeah.
But so I was worried that Donkey Kong Country was going to be, like I said, janky. And it really isn't.
I think it still looks that way, honestly. Like because I've never played this game, but I've watched a lot of YouTube stuff on it. I watched Nintendo Capri Sun play through this entire trilogy, and from my perspective on the visual end, it looks like a pain in the ass to control and to get those hitboxes right. Like the way that those character models work with the enemies seems a little bit hard to judge. I'm not sure if that was your experience with the actual game.
Yeah, I was prepared to. Because I have heard those criticisms at the game from others before playing the game, and I was worried that I'd feel the same way. And I do to some extent. Like, I think there's a lot of edges of platforms and things that sometimes don't quite match the design of the end of the ledge. And that can be a bit frustrating, but I think overall it actually handles incredibly closely to, the Returns and Tropical Freeze game. And that's quite weird because I was prepared for it to feel a lot worse than it did. Now I must say the camera is far more zoomed in, and that is a bit of a downside at certain parts where you are sort of maybe jumping after a vine that has to like swing onto the screen and then you have to get on it and swing on. But I think it holds up really well, and I think the art style is a point where definitely you can say it's not aged in the best way possible. And I would definitely say a game like Super Mario World has aged better in terms of the art style.
Right, that's the general rule of thumb when it comes to Super Nintendo, is that those sprites will live on forever, but even though Donkey Kong was revolutionary in its time and this kind of amazing graphical feast, like nowadays you look back on it and it's like someone's rubbed Vaseline on the screen.
Yeah,
it is ugly as all hell.
I think the technical term is that these are 3D rendered sprites, and I think it was the first game to ever do it that wasn't from, because there were arcade games before then that had done it, but this was the first, home console game to do it. And I think it actually doesn't look amazing these days, but I don't think it looks bad. I actually liked it, and it did feel really classic, and I did enjoy it. And Tropical Freeze was hyped up so much for its music with David Wise, and like this game has David Wise, and like that's just a really cool thing that they carried across because the music in this game is unbelievable. And I think the combination of the music and the art, obviously my two favorite things, but the combination of that and the way the game actually handles, because I think it handles solidly, are real positives for me. One negative I would have is a couple of negatives. A lot of the menus and things are just terrible, and like I think a lot of Super Nintendo games are like that, to be honest. And the way to you have to go to Funky Kong to fly you to the other worlds, etc. So if you want to, because they do still emphasize this idea of going back and trying to 100% the game, collecting the Kong letters, etc. And this game just doesn't allow you to do that in any easy way, and that's a bit of a downside. I would also say that the bosses are really weak, like really, really, really weak. If you're used to, and I do think the bosses stepped it up between Returns and Tropical Freeze, for example. So if you're used to the incredible Tropical Freeze bosses that I absolutely love, this game really does feel like a step back in time when it comes to boss battles. For example, one of the enemies is literally just an oil drum. Like, it's just an oil drum, and then enemies come out of the oil drum, and when you defeat all the enemies, the oil drum randomly explodes, and that's it. And it's a bit like, well,
it's very esoteric.
Yeah, it's not the best. I would say the final boss fight is really cool, actually. I think that is good.
It's also kind of bullshit in its difficulty level.
Yeah, it's hard, and I was using save states. I wasn't using them in a sort of unhealthy manner in the same way I definitely was in Super Mario World. I would never kind of overuse them, and definitely on boss fights, apart from the very final boss, I wasn't saving, doing a save state in between sort of hits or something that you could say. But yeah, like you said, King K. Rool, you defeat him, the credits start rolling, and then he gets back up again and starts fighting you again. You're like, oh my god, what is going on?
Out. Yeah. I mean, come on.
But the way they do it is quite clever, because the names start coming on the screen and they replace all of the C's with K's, and you're like, why have they done that? Is King K. Rool in control of this or something? It's like, I don't know, it's a suggestive sort of thing.
That's really cool. I didn't know that. That's a neat touch they add.
Yeah, so that's a nice little touch. And then, so I save stated after those credits, and then he came back, and then I defeated him like first or second or third time, I think. So the final boss fight is quite long, it's quite tough, but that's what you'd expect. And I think in general, it is a tough game. I wouldn't say it's much more or less tough than a game like Tropical Freeze. And I think it falls short in a lot of ways, in the same way that Mario World or something falls short, in that it's got this ridiculously age-old style of saving where you don't just save per level, you save when you get to a save point. So Candy Kong, for example, she's the save point, and you only get one of those like every 4 or 5 levels, which is really bad. And like, I was just thinking, like, what 2D platformers have Nintendo made where they have fixed this? And the answers are Yoshi's Island. So Super Mario World 2, another Super Nintendo game, actually fixed this, and I'm just so glad that they fixed it in the Donkey Kong series. And it's really telling that they didn't with a game like New Super Mario Bros. U, where they still have that ridiculously old-fashioned complete a few levels and then save. But
it's one of your pet peeves, Bally.
Definitely,
I have to say,
and I'm sure others are annoyed by it as well. And I mean, it didn't affect me in this game because I was using save states. But I mean, games like that without save states, really, really tough for all the wrong reasons. And that's definitely the bottom line. This game didn't take me too long to beat, but it's really cool, really nice environments. Like I said, the music and that underwater theme.
Did you have any trouble in terms of knowing the platforms and stuff you could jump on? Because just looking at the art design and the way the game is drawn, there's a lot of foreground and background elements, and everything is, I mean, I've only watched it through YouTube videos and stuff, so it all seems very blurry. Is the emulation good? Is it quite vibrant on the screen? And did you have trouble with kind of that platforming stuff if you couldn't see areas you had to jump to?
I think it looks very vibrant, and I don't think there's an issue in knowing what's a ledge and what isn't a ledge. I just found the only issue is knowing when that ledge comes to an end, and there are
the hit detection of the actual platform.
The hit detection of the platforming, and that's a very crucial part of 2D platforming.
Exactly right. That's the whole kind of premise of the game.
I mean, but I would only put down to maybe a handful of deaths that were due to misjudging a ledge, if that makes sense. And obviously that's a handful too many, but it's not the end of the world. And while it is a negative, I think overall this is a really solid game that has aged really well, and I really enjoyed it, more so than I thought I might, considering how beautiful and amazing Returns and especially Tropical Freeze are. So overall, really happy with this game. It's on the eShop. If you want to experience some classic Nintendo 2D platformer from a British developer, you should definitely give it a go. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, your love of Donkey Kong continues, I guess, and your hatred of Mario also continues.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep reporting that narrative because I think it's a strong one. And
you got to define yourself, Bally.
DK rules. DK's the best. It's great.
Apparently so.
So I have also been playing. I downloaded all of the free indie demos that Nintendo were doing as part of this offer. I can't remember the name of the offer. It's called like E3 Indie something.
Nindies, I think.
Nindies,
Nintendo
yes.
Indies.
So I downloaded loads of games. I won't talk about all of them. Definitely not. Some of them are not much fun at all or quite simple. But a couple of really interesting ones that stood out to me. Mainly, I would say, is Typo Man. So Typo Man is a really difficult game to describe. It's a 2D puzzle platformer, but the puzzles are really unique. So they're all to do with words and letters specifically. So you are going through the levels, and then by pushing and pulling letters or simply reading what letters are telling you to do and doing it, you're experiencing all these puzzles and things. And like, for example, I really went over the top on Twitter with this. And this is a little bit of a spoiler for this demo, but I hope you won't mind me saying it now. But So you come up to this word lying on the ground. Like this is like a two-dimensional word actually physically on the ground. It's the word part. So you're like, right, the word part. I'm sure I have to find some sort of part somewhere around here, and maybe push it to another part, or I don't know. And you like, it's really weird to try and describe because you really have no idea what you're doing. You're just kind of working out what these words could possibly mean. But you walk up to the word part, and all of a sudden the actual word flips around, spelling the word trap, which is obviously part backwards, and squashes you. And you're just left there like, wow, that is the most awesome thing ever. Like, because this word part becomes trap, and the trap, and you get killed. And it's like, and that's just one of like the many things that this game has to offer. And it's just it's a really cool little idea. And I definitely got really stuck at one point where you're basically given 7 letters to create a 4-letter word, although it doesn't make it clear that they want a 4-letter word. And using a 4-letter word, you have to get past this mechanism that keeps crushing you. So using the letters, I actually was twittering about this, and one of the developers got back to me and said like, oh, yeah, you have to create a 4-letter word. There are 4 different options that all work. And I was like,
wow,
well, that's pretty cool. There's actually 4 different words you can create with these 7 letters. But I was stumped. I was like looking up anagram websites, typing in my letters, like trying to work out which words would work and everything. And eventually, there's another spoiler, but I used the word wait. So the word wait, as in W-A-I-T, stopped the crushing mechanism and made it wait. So
smart.
The fact that it waits means you can walk under it, and like that's just a really cool little thing. And then, I mean,
I like that idea of having multiple solutions, though, because that's the thing with letters and words is, you know, there are so many options, and having the ability to get around multiple, or get around a single puzzle with multiple different solutions is super smart. It makes you feel smart when you figure it out, right?
Yeah, and I think this is an incredibly clever game, and like just judging from basically stalking the guy who talked to me on Twitter and some of the people he followed, it seems like there's actually quite a lot of people working on this game, and things like that. And one downside was that after this puzzle, I walked on a bit further, and I don't know whether this was the game or my Wii U or a bit of both, but basically it just froze, which was a real shame. So I just had to reset the system, and I really didn't want to go back through all the bit I'd done. But I mean, this is a demo, so it's definitely like, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt on that.
Yeah, and all of these Nindies are kind of games that aren't finished yet. They're all kind of in progress, so they're very kind of beta state of affairs, and so frame rates aren't going to be there probably and stuff like that, and so some technical issues will happen. So
like that was Cyberman. I thought it was cool. I'd be interested in picking it up maybe, assuming it's not overly expensive, but we'll see. A few others I enjoyed were like Rive, which is like it's a 2D platformer shootery game, quite Metroidy in many ways, and it had a really good sound design on the shooting and the feedback, and you're like a robot droid sort of thing shooting other robots and things, and nothing overly special about it, but it was just quite solid. I enjoyed that, and other than that, I thought Freedom Planet was quite good. It's a very incredibly Japanese. It's so based on it's basically a clone of a 2D Sonic game, and they've really tried incredibly hard to make it look like 16-bit Sonic, and they do that really well.
It has the Genesis look of it, right? It's like absolute classic Sonic.
Absolutely, and the art design is great. But I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of 2D Sonic. I know you enjoyed Sonic Advance a lot back in the day.
You had it as
well. I had it too,
like...
but I feel like you definitely enjoyed it more than I did, and you like.
Yeah, Sonic Advance is a great game, and Rush is awesome. Like, there's some good 2D Sonic games out there.
So those were a couple. One I just want to quickly mention, and then I'll be done, is Lovely Planet. So this is a first-person shooter, but the art style is completely wild and wacky and kiddie and colourful and everything amazing. And basically, I found it incredibly hard because I actually think this is the first time that I've really kind of sat down by myself and played a game where it's a dual stick shooter, and I found it really hard to, like, you know, obviously align the there's no reticle, but, you know, just just to shoot the enemies basically, and it's a cool idea, cool art style. But yeah, I think in general there are a few games here that are interesting me, and it's a really good thing for them to do overall, to just kind of pique people's interest in some great indie games out there.
Yeah, and you get, I think, 15% off of the final price if you downloaded the demo during this period. So that's good for when they come out, if you're very interested in downloading them and buying them. I'm not sure if it is still on. I think it was just during the week of E3, so it's probably not available anymore. But hey, at least you got to play some of those and enjoy them. I downloaded a couple. I still haven't played them because I've been playing
too many other games. Way too many other games.
Too many other games. So yeah, that's everything then, Bally, right, for you?
Yeah, pretty much. And obviously Minish Cap, but we're going to save that for our special next
Absolutely.
time. But yeah.
Yeah, so I also have been playing Minish Cap, but we'll talk about that next time, because that's going to be our big segment, our backlog club. But I also played a bunch of other video games. So earlier this year, a game came out on Nintendo platform on the Wii U, which is surprising, because that never happens, right? Those games don't exist.
They're getting better. I mean,
they're getting better
until now, but not 2016. But yeah.
So Kirby and the Rainbow Paintbrush, as they call it here in Europe, because curse is apparently too vulgar. It's too vulgar for here, Bally. You have to be PG. So yeah, Rainbow Curse, Rainbow Paintbrush, whatever the hell you want to call it. And at the time, I was like, I kind of want to play this, but also, like, Dan Reichert reviewed it on Giant Bomb, and I trust his opinion quite a lot when it comes to Nintendo games, and he gave it a 2 out of 5, and I was like, and his review read in the sense that, like, this game doesn't do anything particularly groundbreaking because it is a sequel to Canvas Curse. It looks really nice, but hey, the level design isn't fantastic, and it's also super, super short and shouldn't be this price. And having played that, I basically agree with Dan on a lot of things, but I do think that Kirby and the Rainbow Paintbrush is worth playing. It's a fun time, even if it is way too overpriced. And, Bally and I, you were comparing this to Box Boy, another recent game from HAL, which we both loved and played earlier this year. And the proposition that even at a reduced price, because I paid 20 quid for this game took me 4.5 hours to play through from start to finish. Box Boy cost me 5 quid and took me 16 hours to play from start to finish. So, like, it's really weird, and it's also this kind of thing of production versus, actual design, level design, where Box Boy has so much thought and so much depth to it, and Kirby clearly is gorgeous and so much work went into that art style, but it leaves something to be desired when it comes to the levels, because there isn't a huge amount interesting about them.
You need to put the two together, put that, innovation of Box Boy with that amazing art style or something.
Absolutely. Can you imagine, like, if they took those concepts and took them into a much nicer looking... I like Box Boy's art style as this minimalist approach, but, like, kind of that innovation and putting it into the colourful space of Nintendo, wow, that'd be really something.
I mean, how does the claymation look? Because that is the big, selling point of this game.
It looks gorgeous. It's beautiful, and it's the sort of thing where it's so unfortunate that it's not really playable on a TV because of the gamepad interaction and having to draw the lines constantly and be so focused on that there is this incredible stuff going on my HD TV in front of me, but I'm basically using the gamepad the whole time. And after the first session of kind of looking up now and then to see what it looked like, I just played it in front of my computer while I was listening to a podcast or watching something else in the background, and just played it on the gamepad, which is fine, but it's just that you don't get that same impact. And we were kind of talking about this earlier this year, where it's like, if we could play this 2-player, I would 100% want to play as the Waddle Dee or whatever, because then I can play by just looking at the TV screen, right? And not having to make any concessions, and then you could be on the gamepad and do Kirby. But maybe we will try that at some point, because I'm done with this game now, so if I wanted to go back to it, co-op would be an interesting thing to try. So maybe in the future we'll do that. But yeah, I mean, there's lots of cool ideas. You can turn into a tank, and a rocket ship, and there's another one which I can't remember now, but
Submarine.
There are levels based around submarine, that's the one, and they all have very different functions. Like with the tank, you have to tap enemies to shoot them, so you're not so much focusing on drawing lines to get to them and run into them. You're using your tank stuff to shoot their faces off. The submarine automatically shoots missiles out, and I really like this because you actually use the lines to guide the missiles into other objects, so you're not directly impacting them, but you're using the lines to guide them in different directions, and that creates some interesting puzzles. But there are no power-ups in the traditional Kirby sense, so nothing that you kill you get a different power-up from, and I don't know why they didn't include that, because it's such a core hallmark of the series, and shakes things up and makes, things more replayable, and you go back for secrets to find them by going into a different Kirby. To be frank, the secret stuff is not worth doing. All you collect is stars, and every level there are treasure chests that you can find as well, but the only thing they do for you is give you figurines, which, though they look nice because it's clay art style, don't achieve anything. If those treasure chests had been something like unlocking new levels or doing something way more meaningful, then I would have been more invested to go back and play them again. But as it stands, one playthrough is more than enough for me. I enjoyed my time with it, but it's kind of left me cold. There are only 7 worlds. I thought there were going to be 8 worlds, and there are only 7, and it's kind of going against tradition even in that vein. So, a little bit underwhelming, in many aspects, but then it sucks because it's fucking gorgeous. This game is amazing looking, and then you play it and it's I wish this was better than it is, and it's a little unfortunate because, as we've said many times, Canvas Curse is one of our favorite DS games. So, yeah, sucks, Bally.
That's a shame.
Sucks.
That is a shame. But overall, worth it for 20 quid?
I mean, maybe. I still kind of feel robbed at 20 quid, which is bad to say, because there's so much love that has gone into the creation of the game.
Do you think you play games faster than most people?
Maybe. I will say that I heard complaints when this game was coming out from people like Alexa at GameSpot, who reviewed it for them, and even Dan, who was saying one of the boss fights he had to call Jeff to help him because it was really difficult for him. And I didn't find the game very hard. I mean, Bali, you heard me screaming on Skype at the final boss because it was kind of bullshit.
Yeah.
But aside from that, I died maybe 6 times on that final boss, and before that, I'd only died maybe 3 total.
I feel like
in the whole game.
The skill in actually a game like Canvas Curse and the Rainbow Curse, that idea of drawing lines, it's a really unique video game skill that, just because you might be good at, say, a shooter or a driving game or even a 2D platformer, I feel like any of those skills don't really affect how good you are at this very unique line drawing, because it's completely different.
Right, it's almost the sort of thing where I feel like kids who have grown up playing tablet games would be fish to water in this situation. It's very much kind of a tablet experience and would be perfectly at home on iPad. It's the sort of thing where you think about the kind of games that Nintendo could make for those devices, and this fits in perfectly.
Yeah.
It absolutely perfectly.
I mean, does it feel the same as Canvas Curse, the physics of the line drawing?
Yeah, pretty much. And the sound design is amazing. There is this this feedback when you draw a line, Kirby rolls on it. It just feels really nice, and it's a strange thing to say, but you touch the touchscreen, it's so soft and smooth when the line comes out. But it's a nice feedback, absolutely. And yeah, I mean,
does it make you just feel like rabbits and buttercups? It's just that cuddly, warm feeling.
Yeah, and I tweeted basically I played this game the day of Nintendo's digital event. I was feeling pretty down, and then I started up Kirby. I was like, oh, this has put a smile on my face.
Yes.
It's made me feel happy inside, and for that, I think it's worth giving a go. But try and find it cheap, maybe. And it also does the EAD Tokyo thing of repeating bosses, which I think is bullshit. And Nintendo keep doing it, and it's annoying. But what are you going to do? It's just, I guess, that was the way things went for this game. But yeah, it's a great thing to look at. Not so great to play. Maybe give it a bash if you find it cheap. That's my recommendation. Other stuff, I played Grow Home, which I've been talking about wanting to play for a while. If you don't know what this is, it's from Ubisoft, another one of their smaller titles like Valiant Hearts and Child of Light, and this came out earlier this year. It's on PC only at the moment, so you can't get it anywhere else. But it's basically their unique take on a platformer. You're basically this little robot, and he is sent down to a planet to help it grow and deal with the botanical plant life there. And you basically move through the world by growing the plant and attaching to branches and leading them into different directions and basically giving it power so that you can get back to the top and get to your ship again, because I think actually you fall out. So it's basically you're trying to get back and fly away, and it's a lot of fun. It's really short, like it doesn't take a lot of time to get through it. It took me like 2 hours or so. And the controls are really kind of funky in the sense that this robot is super clumsy, he falls over all the time, and trying to climb up structures is a process of kind of rotating between the two shoulder buttons. Basically, each one controls one of his arms, and he kind of grapples his way up. And Bally, you had a bit of a chance to play this.
Yeah.
How did you feel about those controls and the way the game was playing?
They're kind of awkward on purpose, and it works quite well. I definitely feel like you would obviously gain a lot more from a game. Like the way I was playing it was not ideal at all, in the sense that I was just coming into your file after you'd completed the game and you'd already created the entire plant, and obviously it would have been way better to sit down for 2 hours and actually start from the beginning and watch the plant grow and get back to your ship yourself, because I'm sure that is the best part of the game.
Sure, it is.
Because I just felt a bit like thrown into this world where you handle your controls awkwardly, and it was a bit like, oh, this is kind of bad. Like I'm not really enjoying myself right now. But I can definitely see that it's like that for a reason, and playing it from the start, seeing your plant grow, be way more rewarding.
Absolutely. It's a really rewarding experience. It's also gorgeous. It's so bright. Like, it is dripping with color, absolutely just almost burning your eyes out with how much, green and red and all this stuff just blowing your face out. So that is a plus point. So basically, this week's games have basically been happy, fun time, beautiful things that I enjoy looking at, both with flaws in their control department, which is funny that is sort of the case. But yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it. It was on sale in the Steam sale, which is why I was kind of waiting, and I'm glad that I got it at a cheaper price, because again, it was way shorter than I expected it to be. I remember Brad Shoemaker talking about it on the Bombcast earlier this year, and he said he spent a whole afternoon with it, like 5, 6, 7 hours. He did end up like 100%ing it basically and getting everything. I didn't feel the same urge to go back and do that, but I can certainly see that some people would. But I was just happy to experience it. It was just a nice, fun thing, and it's a very unique thing in a platformer. It's not the sort of traditional Mario 3D thing where you have an objective in a level. It's just putting you in this big world and giving you one objective, which is to climb to the top. It's almost...
I mean, in a weird way, it is, open world platforming.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of a basic stab at that concept, and I like it. I like that it's kind of Ubisoft going out there and trying something different and innovating in their own way, and we need more of this, absolutely. And we're seeing other publishers like EA at E3 putting stock into the smaller games like Unravel, which looks beautiful and very yarn vibe to it, like Yoshi and Kirby and all that stuff. So yeah, I hope there's more of this stuff in the future, because it's pretty wonderful. Yeah. And I guess to close things out, I'm not going to say too much, but I finally finished The Witcher 3. Bally, after I finished Witcher 3, I almost was like, I'm done with games. I don't think anything is going to get better than this in my life. What an astounding experience. That game is an absolute masterpiece in so many ways, and after 71 hours, I just didn't. I could have run around and done all these question marks and stuff and just soaked on all the atmosphere, but I was like, I need to move on and play something else. And then I was like, but I don't want to play anything else. I love this so much. And yeah, It has impacted me greatly. The story wraps up in a way that I was really satisfied with. There was a point near the end where I was like, shit, I think I made the wrong decision. I think I might not get an ending that I want. And afterwards I checked the other endings. I was like, nah, I like my ending the most. It was the best of all of them. So I was very happy with that. And man, like I got so deep into that game. Like I went after the special armor that you can get, which is called Witcher gear, and there are 3 different sets of it. And I want the feline gear because it's like good for stamina and stuff, and makes you quick, and has good like sign regeneration, which is the magic stuff that you do. And I basically went around and found all of those diagrams and upgraded it once and twice and 3 times, and had to do 2 different side quests to get these different armorers, like the blacksmith and the armorer. You can't get mastercrafted gear unless you have both of them, and you have to go and do their own side quest to make them so they have the tools that are able to make it. It's a whole thing, Bally. It's a whole big thing, and I did it all. I did goddamn everything because I loved it so much.
It sounds like with all the gaming reviewers and journalism sites that this is going to take a lot of beating in terms of game of the year, like a real big massive amount of beating. And
I mean, a lot of people are excited about Fallout 4 at the end of the year.
That's true.
I think a lot of people are going to be leaning
Mario
in that
Maker
direction. Yeah, maybe. Certainly has a shot there. Right, but man, Witcher 3 is goddamn fucking insanely good. And yeah, it will be in the conversation for Game of the Year, no doubt. I'm not gonna 100% say it is mine right now, but I like having to ruminate on that and Ori and trying to figure out which one. I don't know. It's maybe gonna just claim a spot. It feels like the sort of game which is now in my favorites of all time. So yeah, I don't know really much more to say about it. If you have a PC or an Xbox One or a PS4, you need to play this game. That's simply it. That's simply the case. So, yep, that's the video games that I played. There's many of them, and it was a good time. So, yeah, I think that's going to close out our segment. We'll be back after the break, talk more about your emails, to catch up on some of those, and yeah, hope you'll join us in a second. So we will be right back.
I know not if fate would have us live as one, or if by love's blind chance we've been bound. The wish I whispered when it all began, did it forge a love you might never have found? You flee, my dream come the morning. Your scent berries tart, lilac sweet. To dream of raven locks and twisted stormy, of violet eyes glistening as you weep.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the second part of This Nintendo Life. It's time for some emails. We've had quite a build-up over the last little while, so I think we'll just get straight to it. So our first email is from Art. Hi Emblem and Bally, I've been listening to your podcast religiously since purchasing my first ever Nintendo console, the Wii U. I've had many Nintendo handhelds but never got around to getting a console till now. Problem with me is that I love the idea of playing games, but between work and my wife, I end up collecting consoles and games rather than playing with them. That all changed as soon as my nieces and nephews got old enough to play with me. Question for you. What game recommendations for the Wii U can you give someone who wants to have fun yet can't invest too much time in? Currently, I play tons of Mario Kart 8 and some Super Smash Brothers because I can just jump into these games quickly for a fix. I love RPGs, but with long games I sometimes have to relearn gameplay, or I'll sometimes forget the story and then the experience falls flat. So the games I'm considering are Stealth Inc. 2, Guacamelee, Shovel Knight, Pikmin 3, Affordable Space Adventures, and the Trine series. Lord help me when Xenoblade comes out. Keep up the great work with the podcast. Thanks, Art. Or he's also called Art Sport, and he's from Sunnyvale, not Scotland, in California.
Well, I wasn't sure that there was a Sunnyvale in Scotland.
We'll have to look that one up.
Yeah. Oftentimes there are many places in America that are obviously named after places in the UK, but I've not heard of that one. So, and it wouldn't really be keeping in tradition with Scotland. I mean, it's sunny right now for me, but that is not the norm, I can guarantee you.
No, absolutely not.
So yeah, a lot of interesting picks there for games that he wants to be playing. And he does mention he's playing with his nieces and nephews and stuff. So there are some interesting ones to pick out here. I think Affordable Space Adventures is definitely a cool one. Now neither of us have played that, but I know that it is really a good cooperative experience, especially because the secondary objectives for the other players are more simple. Like one person controls like the light/X-ray scanner, and one person controls like the movement of the ship. And for example, like if you're playing it with younger people, can be on the gamepad doing the complicated navigation and moving up the bars and stuff. And yeah, it's a cool cooperative adventure kind of thing to go with. So that's definitely a good one if you're looking for that sort of thing. Bally, any picks here?
I think 2 local multiplayer games that are possibly two of the top of all time for me are on the Wii U, and they're really great to just jump into and get back out of. And I'd agree with your suggestion of Pikmin 3. I think that's got an incredible co-op element to that game, where there's a series of missions that you can team up with someone and take on these missions, and it's done incredibly well. So definitely Pikmin 3, I'd agree with you on that one. And I'd also say Nintendo Land is really good for a variety of number of players. And we've had some incredible times with sort of 5 players with that game, MBZ, and that's some of the best local multiplayer I've ever had. And they're quite short experiences, so you can obviously play for hours on end, but it's quite easy to just go in, play a few rounds, hop back out again.
Yeah, absolutely. Nintendo Land is very underappreciated, I think, because it wasn't the huge, big, gigantic Wii Sports success. A lot of people kind of...
But it's a better game.
Yeah, I think it probably is. A lot of people didn't pay enough attention to it, and, I mean, that's the problem. It is flawed because in single player it doesn't have the same appeal. There are some incredibly good single player games in there. The Donkey Kong one is one of my favorites, and it's really, really great. But aside from that, it's very thin. And if you don't have multiple people to do, Mario Chase and the Pikmin one, not the Pikmin one, the Animal Crossing one, those games are way more fun with people around, and as someone who's going to be playing with younger people, that's very easy to pick up and play. Very simple controls, the objectives are obvious, and it's also just super rewarding experience. So absolutely agree there. He also suggested Trine. I think Trine is another good one. It may be a little bit more complicated, but it's a good co-op experience. Is also really good in single player, so if you just want to play it on your own, that kind of serves both purposes there, which is perfect. And he also mentions both Guacamelee and Shovel Knight, and as someone who he is probably looking for more short experiences, absolutely 2 of the best indie games on Wii U. Shovel Knight I would probably recommend first, and then go to Guacamelee, but they are both absolutely excellent, and you should try any of those if you have the time. And hopefully you'll get through this backlog, be able to play Xenoblade when that comes out. But if not, hey, you're going to have some fun while doing it, because you've got some great suggestions here. Is there anything else that he hasn't suggested, Bally, that you think you'd recommend?
I mean, it's not good for local, but it's very good for pick up and play a few rounds. Is definitely Splatoon. I've really enjoyed just, even for short half-hour bursts, even 20-minute bursts, also very long bursts. It's easy to hop in and out of, and really good fun.
Yeah, that's a very good one. It's certainly the rounds are so quick that you can jump in and squeeze a couple in before doing something or going somewhere. Absolutely, great pick up and play. It would be great to have Splatoon on 3DS, but that is probably not as likely of happening. But maybe one day, who knows? All right, well, let's move on to the next question.
So our next email is from Zvari1228, who's from Kansas. So I'm really excited for the new Fire Emblem games, and I've been following all bits of information like a hawk. Earlier, I was browsing a forum where a person proposed an interesting situation. He asked, what if the new Fire Emblem games are free to start? The idea being that you can download the first 5 chapters of the game for free and pay for the rest later. When I first saw the post, I thought, no way, I'm not going to let Fire Emblem be ruined by a silly smartphone game marketing. But when I thought about it more, it began to make sense. Because after the first 5 chapters, the player has to decide between Hoshido and Nor.
Hoshido and Nor.
Hoshido. Okay,
Come on, Bally.
Yes, Hoshido and Nor. So this gives players a chance to decide which path they want to buy. Nintendo and Intelligent Systems recently went with this free-to-start strategy with stretch mode, which is called Full Box in PAL territories. So there is a small amount of precedent for this. So what do you guys think of this idea? Is it crazy or is it possibly feasible? Anyway, I love the podcast.
All right, Zwari, very excellent question there. I am absolutely in the camp of it being feasible. I don't think you're crazy. I think that obviously Nintendo have tried many different models for the free-to-start thing, and stretch mode being the most recent one. And Bally, you actually tried a bit of stretch mode, didn't you?
Yeah, no, it's a good game, and if I didn't have a backlog and wanted something to play on my new 3DS, I'd definitely consider expanding into those extra packs you can buy for it.
And did you feel like that experience gave you the impetus to go out and buy the full thing? Was it a successful thing they did there by allowing you to play this free segment of it?
Yeah, but I don't really get the difference between free to start and having a demo.
Right. That is kind of the point that I was going to bring up after we kind of talked about that a little bit more. Yeah. Is yes, this makes sense if they're going to posit it that way, but in other terms, they could just do what they did with Codename Steam, which is basically the same thing, where they give you the first 3 missions and let you play through those. Unfortunate thing with Codename Steam is those don't carry through to the full game, so if you get the full thing, you have to play those all over again, which is annoying and kind of a pain in the ass. But that's a demo, and they didn't posit it at anything else other than that, so I find it interesting, and it makes sense, because really, when it comes down to it, you're paying for either one campaign or the other, and that choice is made at a certain point in the chapter. So if they let you download it for free and then take you to the eShop as soon as you hit Chapter 5, it maybe is an easier way to get people to invest in the full game, because there's no barrier to entry to start with. They just download the demo or whatever, or the free-to-start version, and play through it. And if they like it enough, then they get to Chapter 5 and they're on a cliffhanger, which I think that kind of chapter does end in that way. Then they're pushing people straight towards the eShop, saying, hey, you can download this right now and go and choose and play the full thing. So it would work, I feel, but I'm not sure that.
Do you like that trend, or do you prefer the traditional idea of buying a 30 to 40 quid game and that's that?
So the thing with this Fire Emblem game is they are offering these 2 versions from the outset. So already it's not the traditional go out and buy a $40 game thing. It's already, you are sitting there with, it's not even the Pokemon mentality, because apparently these games are very divergent and they are very different. So it's like 2 separate products. And so because of this unique situation, I think that this would work, but Nintendo aren't applying it, and we know that already because the game has come out in Japan. So even if they could pull this sort of thing in the West with the digital version, but it would have to be with the digital version. When it comes to the physical copy, you don't have a choice, because you have already invested in what you're going to be playing. If you're going to go the Hishido or the Nor side, you don't have any option there. Whereas if you are going digital, then it frees you up in a sense, because you can get to know the characters and see which side you like more, and then ultimately make that decision. But yeah, it's a question of whether it makes any sense to make it a free-to-play thing, and whether that would benefit more than it hurts them. And I'm not sure it really makes a huge difference. It's hard to say, honestly. So
I can see why they would do it, because I feel like if you imagine that paying for everything might cost a little bit, say it might cost a little bit more than buying one solid game, so a traditional game. It might cost more to download all the content. I can see that really appealing to Nintendo, because I mean the Fire Emblem fans are pretty. Hardcore is a very simple word, but they are quite hardcore, and like they will be prepared to invest the hours and invest the time.
Look, I'm going to buy both versions,
exactly.
and I'm going to download the DLC third campaign. I'm a fucking idiot, but I love Fire Emblem, so I can't do anything about that. Like, they are kind of taking me for a ride, and I'm going to just jump on the ride, because, what can I do other than that?
And I do worry about that. And even we were just talking about the Smash Brothers DLC, and while it is great DLC, it is quite pricey, especially in comparison to something like the Mario Kart DLC, for example, that was this year and last year, which I think everyone agreed was incredibly good value for what you were getting. So I'm just worried that between this and obviously Amiibo, I think Nintendo are coming up with, I would say, not what's the word I'm looking for. I just, it's obviously not traditional at all, these incomes that these new forms of income that they're getting. But I'm just worried. I'm worried that there's too many little places to nickel and dime you, and you just want the same traditional games.
Well, if you're talking about nickel and diming, then in that sense, this model of doing the free-to-play stuff would work out way better for the consumer, because you're not basically jumping in, without any knowledge. You are having a taste, first of all, and then getting to make a more informed decision, right? If it is free, then you play the first 5 chapters, and hey, if you don't like it, then you're freed up from that. But if you make the initial investment, get 5 chapters in, and you're like, this game isn't for me, well, that's a problem, because you've paid $40 and now you're out of that money, and you can take it back, but you're probably not going to get a good amount in return. So there are silver linings here, and I think that it could potentially work, but really, when it comes to that stuff, it should just be the sort of thing where it is like a demo and nothing more, nothing less, and then give you the option, and not kind of microtransactioning or anything along those lines. But it's a really interesting question to ask, and it's the sort of thing where, because of the structure of this game, you can make that argument. So
they shouldn't try this with Fire Emblem. They should just relaunch Advance Wars and try it out with that.
Oh, great! Yeah, you'd love that, wouldn't you? Jeez.
Yeah.
No, it would be an interesting thing to do. It's also interesting because on mobile platforms with games like Phoenix Wright and Ghost Trick, which Capcom have ported to iOS, there are the option to download like the first case of a Phoenix Wright game for free. And if you like it, then you can pay money and get the rest of the game. And that's kind of an interesting way to deal with things, and especially on a platform like that where it's so hard to get people to spend anything more than $1 on anything in that store. Giving you the first case and letting you decide, is this worth it, is this something I want to invest in, is cool. And I like that that is a possibility for people, as opposed to folks who are just going to get the 3DS version and not really have that choice going into it. They're just going to be locked in no matter what. So, very interesting questions, Vari, and one that we can ruminate on a bit more, and maybe we'll see Nintendo try stuff like this in the future, and we can refer back to this conversation and see if we were right, if we were wrong, or what. So, yeah, thanks for that.
Our next email is from Chaotix. Hey NBZ and Bally, love the show, keep it up. I may consider myself a Nintendo fan, but still haven't played many of the games they offer. I keep meaning to start playing a Zelda game, but I'm unsure which to begin with. Note that I'm looking for any level of difficulty, but looking for the one that is the most interesting and playable. The only Zelda game I've played before is Link's Awakening, and I did not even complete this game. Availability is a factor for the game to be playable, meaning since I do not possess a Wii or Wii U because my Wii is elsewhere, or an NES, though if you're allowed to suggest emulation, an NES can be easily emulated. What would you recommend?
Okay, it's a big thing, right? When you haven't got into a franchise and it's so revered and long running, and there are so many entries, it's kind of intimidating to be like, where do I start with this? Is there a good starting point? Is there a bad one? And what can I do to get into the series? And I kind of I'm finding that with the new series that I'm trying to get into, like playing Castlevania.
Don't start with the first one.
Well, sometimes that is worthy of historical documentation. But for fun factor, I'm not sure I would recommend it. And that's the thing. Like, it also depends on kind of how old you are and what era you grew up in and what you're attuned to. You know, if this guy has grown up with the NES when he was young and is like into all those games but just never for some reason got around to playing Zelda, then maybe it is a good idea to go and play that one first because you have context and you have like that time period which you really like those games, so maybe that's the opportunity to go there. But in this case, I'm not sure that would probably be the one that we would choose, obviously. Bally, what do you think here? What's the one that you'd probably throw out?
In terms of your availability, Chaotix, I think sort of a really fast-paced Zelda that really sticks to the traditional form factor but introduces new mechanics and is incredibly enjoyable, very playable, slightly on the easy side of Zelda is definitely Link Between Worlds. It's definitely one of my top Zeldas, easily. I've only played through it once. I definitely want to play through it again. But the fast-paced nature of that game and the way with which the dungeons are designed and just the sheer number of dungeons, like the same number as, Ocarina of Time and Link to the Past. Like, I think it's like 11, I think. I'm not sure, but it's a really solid Zelda.
Yeah, Link Between Worlds is, I think it's a very obvious pick, and it's one of the most recent ones to come out. It's also 2D, which kind of introduces you to the conventions of Zelda without overwhelming you, and without throwing you into that setting of like this larger world and with more things to do, and also sets up your expectations for when you go on to those games, right? So it's the sort of thing where maybe if you started with Wind Waker or Ocarina of Time or something and went back to 2D Zelda, you might be like, oh, this experience isn't as open or freeing or as epic in scale or that kind of thing. I think it's probably a good idea if you have the opportunity, which he does right now, to play that game and to be like, okay, I like these mechanics and, kind of getting an idea of dungeon structure. And also, as you said, it is quite easy. So if you're intimidated on that end of difficulty stuff, you won't have trouble getting through it, and you'll be able to kind of glide your way past all the dungeons and have a good pace to it. That's an excellent suggestion. And then after that, I would absolutely say you go to a 3D one. And I would probably say that Wind Waker's a good jumping in point.
He has said that he doesn't have a Wii or a Wii U.
Right, that is true. Well, that's unfortunate then, isn't it? Because I think that's like kind of the perfect way to go.
You might have a GameCube, so I do think
True.
it is possible to pick up copies of Wind Waker on GameCube online.
Well, in that case, if because he's playing on handhelds, right? Then Ocarina of Time 3D is the obvious choice after that. It's kind of the one that started 3D Zeldas and set the template for them. And I think is very different to Link Between Worlds, so it does give you kind of divergent experiences there. I think those are good suggestions. On 3DS, if you're going to go with those, start with Link Between Worlds, then move on to Ocarina 3D, and then, if you want to go back to the NES one, obviously easy emulation, you can do that. I think those are good suggestions.
So our final email this week is from Noah. Hello MBZ and Bally, this is Noah writing in from Louisville, Kentucky. I've been a long-time listener since episode 1, but a first-time writer. Thank you for providing me with hours of enjoyment, usually at school or when I'm grinding in games. As a huge fan of JRPGs, I've enjoyed MBZ talking about them. I'd recommend Bravely Default for the 3DS as another good RPG. I've just finished it and really enjoyed it. Now on to my question. After Nintendo's underwhelming performance at E3, what do you think they could have done to make it better? Anyways, thanks for being awesome people.
Okay, Noah, thank you for the question, and also, recommending Bravely Default. I have said in the past, I don't want to play Bravely Default because of the horrendous things I've heard about that game's ending and how it is padded out the arsehole. But I am looking forward to its sequel, Bravely Second, which is coming out next year, I believe. So I will most likely play that instead because it will probably be the same stuff, but improved and better, and I'm definitely going to jump into that game when it comes out next year. So we'll see what happens then. But on to E3 stuff, I guess. We're going to do our segment on like more Treehouse stuff after this, but Bally, obviously many people disappointed and underwhelmed with Nintendo's performance this year. What could they have added to make it a decent, if not good, E3?
I think, and we've said this in a few E3s before, not necessarily last year's because that was a very strong one, but it's just that idea there just needed to be one more big game, and we've said that before, like I said, and it's just irritating because really big franchises like, you know, Metroid Prime just got its name dragged through the dirt as it became Metroid Prime Federation Force, and I'm not saying the big titles weren't there, because they were, but like I said, just it needed one more big one.
It needed a gut punch. It needed a holy shit moment, and there weren't any of those because we knew about Star Fox. And I think that is probably one of the biggest factors is Nintendo's decision-making last year to even mention the name Star Fox and to even show to the press behind closed doors some of that stuff. It kind of helped to some degree, but I think their presentation last year would have been stellar even without that, you know? Even without the mention of Star Fox, it would have been a fantastic E3 for them last year. And so they kind of went out and added that for no reason, and it hurt them this year because that could have been a holy shit moment where people would have been surprised and excited about it. But as it was, people were expecting it, they knew it was coming, and then a lot of people were underwhelmed by it in many senses. You know, there's not the best of word of mouth coming back from the E3 show floor about how it controls, and also it doesn't visually look that appealing. So, you know, lots of caveats coming here, even with an announcement like that. So, absolutely, that is one factor. I also think just the way they structured E3 could have been done better. I know they wanted to plan it out to have the Smash Direct and the championships and all this other stuff, but they could have done a better job of the digital event if they had just kind of held that Smash Brothers stuff back for the digital event, if they had taken some of the stuff from the mini or micro direct beforehand and put some, even like stuff like Chibi Robo, which, it's surprising to say now, would have actually been quite a nice surprise to throw in the digital event, honestly. And we were thinking beforehand that that micro direct was a sign, oh, they are getting all their shit out the way so that they can make room for the big guns. But wait a second, like stuff like this Mario tennis game on Wii U would have been right at home in the micro direct. So would have the Animal Crossing board game been right at home in the micro direct. So it's almost this confusing messaging that's going on where they think this stuff is bigger than it actually is, and it really isn't. So yeah, just general restructuring would have helped.
In terms of big guns, I feel like a big misstep was they basically made Mario's 30th anniversary a big gun. Not necessarily even to do with Mario Maker, but just a celebration of years of Mario. And it's like, okay, we all love Mario, but we don't need a segment of the digital event to celebrate his life and, you know, talk about all his games. We want new content, and we need another actual big gun in the form of a game, not a celebration.
Yeah, and even as we said before, something like an HD remaster of a classic Mario game would have satiated that need to some degree. And if we had those aspects, I think we could have come out of E3 and been relatively positive and, you know, thinking Nintendo had a good showing. And just like the lack of those little things and stuff like that made it a crushing disappointment, which is a big difference between that and like something that is good. So yeah, a lot of issues there, and not all of them to do with the games they were showing, which is kind of surprising. So yeah, I mean, you know, stuff to look forward to next year if Nintendo keep their promise, like Reggie keeps shooting out of the PR mouthpiece that, oh, we're only showing things 6 to 8 months ahead.
I mean, he did promise us he would beat Hungry Box, and
yeah, well, he doesn't keep his promises, does he, this Reggie man? But yeah, I know, you know, next year is going to be very, very interesting, and we'll be watching it closely. So, yeah, thanks for all your emails. We'll continue to answer those as the weeks go on. And Bally, where can people send those in?
Please send all your emails to ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. We really enjoy reading them.
Yes, we do. So that's going to be us for this segment. We will join you after the break with our E3 Treehouse discussion and go a bit more in depth on some of the games that Nintendo showed at the show. So join us in a bit. Okay, everyone, welcome back to the final part of our show today, and we're going to be wrapping up a bit of E3, doing a bit of post-show talking about some Treehouse segments where they went into a bit more detail about video games that they showed in their digital event and other places. So, yeah, I mean, we've calmed down a little bit since last time, and we were also on another podcast, the Nintendo Show, and we'll remind you of that again at the end of this podcast, where we had a bit more of a calm discussion about stuff that happened with E3 and Nintendo. But yeah, Bally, you feeling okay now about the rest of the year and Nintendo going into 2016?
I think I am, and I think I've always been happy about 2015. It's looking like a cracking remainder of the year, so yeah, lots to be happy about.
Alright, good. So how about we jump into some stuff that they covered a bit more in detail at Treehouse. Bally, I know you watched almost every single thing on Mario Maker that they had to show.
Oh yeah, watched
so
all
is there some stuff you want to pick out from there and talk about?
I think when Mario Maker was first announced, or even before that, when people were sort of hypothesizing about the idea of a Mario level editor, I think everyone agreed that in theory it's an absolutely incredible idea, but Nintendo actually have to get it right on many levels. So they have to make sure that the editor is right, that it's easy to pick up and play. They've nailed the art style between, the 4 versions of 2D Mario. And I think most importantly, and what we learned in the Treehouse live events, and they didn't mention at all in the digital event, is how it's going to work online and how you're going to be able to share your levels, how many levels you can make, how they're going to rank those levels in terms of difficulty. And it just seems like the second Mario Maker was announced, there were so many hoops for Nintendo to jump through. And I feel like this E3, they've really proved themselves and jumped through all those hoops. Because I think, for example, the online functionality, I think just the simple mechanic they've done in order to define how difficult a stage is they just rank them in order of what percentage of people can complete it. And that's just a great idea that seems quite simple, but it's definitely not something I would have thought of to rank these levels. So just stuff like that, I feel like they're getting it right.
Yeah, it's a good way of arranging stuff instead of having an arbitrary way of people saying, oh, I think my level's really hard, so I'm going to mark it as difficult. And, sometimes people aren't going to be able to judge that sort of stuff. And it really comes down to when many people play it and you get this kind of average and it's like, okay, only 12% of people completed this level. So not only is it indicating, hey, this is hard, but it's also saying, hey, if you beat this level, you're within that 12% of people, so you're going to feel pretty good about yourself, right, about being able to complete it. So there's kind of double layer here in terms of, satisfaction for the people who beat it and also indicating if you're not good enough, hey, maybe don't go this far and don't try this level. So, yeah, that stuff is fantastic.
And I believe that everyone's limited to uploading 10 levels initially or something, just to stop them getting bombarded by people uploading, I'm sure the vast majority of these levels that are going to get uploaded are going to be terrible because video game design's hard, and just because they've given us a tool to make a 2D Mario doesn't mean everyone's going to be able to make a very good level. So I think that's
And I believe
important.
The way it works is that for good creators who are making really outstanding stuff, people can give them stars or give them high ratings, and that will enable them to expand their online portfolio essentially and be like, okay, now you can upload up to a maximum of 20 levels and 30 levels and 40, and give them the platform then, once you know they're an established good creator, for them to keep putting out good stuff. Because as you said, yes, they could very easily flood the marketplace with hundreds of thousands of awful levels from people who are putting in no effort and aren't making stuff that people want to play. So it's super smart in that way, and just, rewarding the people who are good at making good levels. So yeah, that stuff it's looking like it's going to work so well. I'm excited for it. And another thing they talked about is you will not be able to upload a level unless you complete it yourself. So you won't have the kind of Kaizo Mario ROM situation where these levels are so fucking stupidly impossible that only using save states will you be able to get through them. You have to, as the creator, beat your level before you put it online. So you're never going to run into a situation where it's like, this is literally impossible. Which is great. That's a great way and a smart thing to do.
And I think that since this game was first shown versus this E3, I feel like it's just shot up in terms of the amount of stuff and the amount of different things you can actually add to your level and create is just astronomical. It's crazy the amount you can do. And I mean, one example like of something that I hadn't thought of at all, but we both watched at the same time, MBZ, was a level where Mario, you literally just walk. I don't think you even have to move. I think Mario just starts. The level starts and Mario stays on one spot and he moves through the whole level automatically through chutes and platforms and everything, and you don't even have to move him. And it's just sort of, I hope I've explained that well, but it's just a feat of really good game design for people to be able to create a level like that. And I think that's just such a cool thing that I never thought of, certainly last
It's
year.
almost like a Mario roller coaster. It's just like, watch him as he gets flung through this level with all this intricate stuff around him. Obviously, you're not playing it, so it's not like, this insane challenge or something that you have to get through, but it's just a marvel, a spectacle almost, of what people can do and the different ways that you can use this tool set to create different things in this game. That's not even like making a video game at that point. It's almost creating some kind of, form of art. Like not that games aren't art in themselves, but it's a very different kind of experience. So I know that there are going to be people doing things like that aren't necessarily just, Mario going through a level on his own, but different interesting things that don't necessarily adhere to your standard Mario type level. And it's going to be exciting to see how that stuff works out. So, I mean, we're both really looking forward to this game now after seeing the Nintendo World Championship stuff, and we know now that there are going to be over 100 levels in the game, created by different people, from Nintendo internal to the Treehouse people to whoever, and
I'm sure Reggie even made a level for the game.
Well, I don't know, man. Reggie doesn't seem too up on the video games, unfortunately. But we'll see. He
doesn't play 16 hours a day of Smash.
No, clearly not. He's busy running a company apparently. So. Poor guy. Let's move on then to a bit of Star Fox. That was shown pretty extensively. How much Star Fox did you manage to catch, Bally?
I saw all of it, yeah. I'm really more excited for this game now than I was. I think a lot of the stuff they showed in the Treehouse focused a lot on the transformations between sort of the Chicken Walker and the R-Wing. And just the way that that's implemented into certain levels. Like, for example, one level you're literally flying through space and then sort of this door opens up. It's all very Star Wars-esque, that kind of idea. And this door opens up onto this sort of space station, and then you just become the walker and start walking around inside. And it's just cool that the level goes from flying around outside to walking around inside, through this transformation mechanic. And it's a nice
really thing
cool.
Where you don't have to worry about jumping out of your spacecraft and then running back to it, because there's no on-foot combat in the traditional sense of like Star Fox Assault. It's like the vehicle just transforms and you can just get up and fly away if you want to, whenever you want to, which is a really nice compromise and a way to add like different forms of play to that gameplay that you wouldn't otherwise have been able to. So that stuff is cool, and I'm a fan of it. Again, though, like I was hearing that even in those Treehouse segments, I haven't seen all of them, but apparently, like they were having trouble doing that aiming stuff even amongst themselves. So people who are, internally at Nintendo localizing this game, most likely, who are playing it many hours a day, are not really getting to grips with the controls. And again, that's something that I've heard from many people on the show floor, that the controls are unwieldy and very hard to get used to. Is that still a concern for you going into this?
Yes, to some extent. It is incredibly different to the traditional Star Fox 64, where you're using the analog sticks to move the ship. That's normal. But then using the gamepad, you can look around your cockpit and you can shoot it a different direction to the one you're flying in, which you couldn't do before at all.
It feels like the end of New Hope, Star Wars New Hope, where Luke and Han are in the Millennium Falcon, using their kind of side cannons to shoot around the ship while the ship is kind of floating through free space on its own.
It's.
But you're the one person doing everything in that situation. So.
Yeah, so I think I mean, in order to utilize it properly, it looked a bit weird while they were doing it, because the gamepad was just a small screen in the bottom right, and often they'd be flying in a straight line, and you'd be watching them flying in a straight line on the big screen, but then you would see the blaster go off at like a right angle. You'd be like, oh my god, how are they doing that? And then obviously they are basically looking around to the right, looking at some ships, shooting them, and then coming back. So I do think, in theory, it's something I'm confident I can get used to and really enjoy. I just hope that they make sure that they have some sort of maybe reset button or something that makes it really easy to just get back to where you were flying, so that you don't have to do stuff as simplistic as just fly in a straight line, and that there can be a more natural progression to it.
Yeah, it's in Splatoon, I believe you're able to do that, aren't you? Recenter the camera with the Y button or something. So it seems like that's something they would do, if not already have implemented.
And I think it works great in that game. So, I mean, if they can do it in that, I'm sure they can do it in Star Fox, but we'll see.
Yeah, I am a little bit worried about, splitting my attention, dividing it between the top screen and the gamepad, and how that will work, and if it will be a fun experience or not. And as I've talked about already about Kirby and having to use the gamepad for that and being unplayable on the television, yeah, it doesn't fill me with the most, hope.
I mean,
in that sense.
What games have you played a lot of on your Wii U where you have had to sort of look between the gamepad and TV? Because for me, I think the only one I've played that really utilizes it is Wind Waker HD a bit, with the map and everything and all that.
Right, but in that scenario, you can stop on the main screen and then just use the map and pause it almost to kind of do inventory management and to do map management stuff. So
yeah,
it's different because you're not using them both simultaneously like in this situation. You're using them independently of one another.
Okay, yeah.
So.
Well, I'd say in Pikmin, it does feel more integrated, and that game is weird, especially the way I was playing it, because, like I said, episodes and episodes ago, way back, I was playing with the gamepad in my lap with a nunchuck and Wiimote in my hand, and using the touchscreen with like a finger, and then going back. So it felt weird, but it felt good, and I'm sure that's one example of an area where Nintendo did something really unusual and actually worked out well. So that is sort of another reason why I do have faith that Star Fox Zero is going to be good.
Yeah, look, we'll get used to it probably, but it's a barrier to entry that I'm not sure needed to be there. And we talk all the time about how Nintendo are always like, oh, but we can't bring back this franchise unless we do something innovative with it. And then you throw back in their faces, well, how about you stop making fucking new Super Mario Brothers games that are all clones of each other? Miyamoto's off saying, oh, we can't do F-Zero until we have new ideas. Well, doesn't make a difference for new Super Mario Brothers, does it? You don't have any fucking new ideas for that series, and you keep shitting them out. So it's frustrating. It's so fucking frustrating.
They had Mario Maker now.
Yeah, great. Well, that thing is way more innovative than any Mario game in the last 10 years has been, so I'm glad it exists, So, yeah, I mean, Star Fox, yeah, anything else you want to say on it? I mean, there's cool kind of multiple ways you can defeat the boss by going into the core and the inside, and
I think that the sort of the scale of the bosses is looking incredibly impressive, and just Star Fox 64 has so much character, like the way that all the people, they're not people, they're animals, the way that all the characters speak with each other constantly, and with the enemies as well, and with the bosses, and there's just that real repertoire between everyone. And I feel like this game is, and they've got a lot of the voice actors back apparently, and that's really cool that they're going for that. And that's the best thing about Star Fox in my view, and I think that's
it's very corny, but I think it works in that sense. So yeah, it's as Miyamoto said, based off kind of his love of Thunderbirds, which in itself is kind of takes that tact in many areas. So understandable. Yeah, so Star Fox, we'll keep an eye on that, obviously, coming later this year. Then we have the most controversial game of the show, I would say. Out of any conference, probably. This is probably the most controversial game shown by anyone. Metroid Prime Federation Force. which apparently was not playable on the show floor unless you were playing Blast Ball. Did you watch any Blast Ball outside of the Nintendo World Championship, Bally?
Did. And it was kind of cringeworthy how excited about Blast Ball they were all getting. It was like,
oh dear.
They were like, "Oh wow, man, good goal, well done." I'm like, "Oh, just turn it. You're at an 11 right now. We need to turn it down to like a 3 because it was just, it's just cringe." And like, I do think this is a criticism I have of Treehouse Live in general, is that it's all fine when I'm watching a game that I'm really into and to see them get actually excited about it. But when I'm watching something I can't get excited about in the slightest, like Blast Ball, it feels really detached to see these. I was going to call them video game journalists. They're nothing but the sort. To see these people get so excited about it, it just feels really detached. So, yeah, Blast Ball's just it's not exciting me, I'm afraid, at the moment.
No, neither am I excited about it. It looks like slow-paced and horrible and boring. But it is like more of a mini game as a part of this full thing, which is Metro Prime Federation Force. And I have to say, after watching some gameplay of this, it looks pretty fun. It's nothing revolutionary.
Did you see the chibi space pirates?
Yes, yes, I did. I saw many of them,
funny.
in fact. It's obviously this co-op online experience with 4 players, and you have to complete objectives. And one of the missions was to get these 4 snow creatures into cages. So it's not like killing them. It's not going around with a horde mode and murdering loads of things. Although the second part of the demo was more like that. But at least in the first half, it was like this objective is to get these guys into a cage, make sure they stay in there, and make sure one of your friends isn't in there at the same time, because otherwise you can lock them in, and then they get all screwed over, and they might die, and you have to help each other out, so you have a healer who can bring people back to life, and I think, they have different classes available and that sort of stuff. But it looked like, yeah, this could be a fun time. My problem is, if this didn't have the Metroid name on it, would I give a shit? And it's hard to say that I would, because there are so many of these style of games, admittedly not many on Nintendo platforms, but there are so many online co-op experiences out there, and this seems kinda generic when you look at the art style and the characters and even some of the stuff they're doing. I want to be excited, but it's also the kind of thing, it's like, well, maybe I'm just being excited because the name Metroid's on there, and that's really just it. So.
It feels a bit like, how Nintendo do their take on lots of genres. We've just had Splatoon with the third-person online shooter. I feel like this is Nintendo's sort of take on a game like Evolve, where it is that 4 versus 1, and you are having to work as a team to take down this, not take down in the same way, but to trap this beast. And it looks kind of cool. It looks quite good. It looks all right, but you're completely right. I don't think I'd have much interest without that Metroid name. And now I'm fascinated as to I'm actually like, I need this Federation Force to have more of a backstory, to get more invested in them, because I know that, I think someone said in interviews that this is a real battle between, like the Federation's force and the space pirates, and at some point in that story arc they are going to introduce Samus into the story. I'm a bit worried about how they're going to do that, but
it also doesn't make a lot of sense of how you'd implement a story into this, because it's an online co-op game. Is the campaign meant to be played with 4 people continuously going through the story at the same time? Or is this just like mission-based and you're like, let's play this mission today? It's hard to say because they haven't really explained much of that stuff.
I have a feeling they've not even decided themselves, maybe. I think because they've been so unclear about any modes in the game. Obviously, they said that Blast Ball was a separate kind of thing in of itself, but you're right. They've not really said, right, here's a story mode. It's going to be co-op. It's going to be single player. They've just said, here's some co-op levels that we've made that you can see and get excited about. And it's like, they look fine, but I need to know about the story mode. And how
do you think that there will be a single player where you go through and the other 3 characters are just AI controlled as opposed to anything else?
I think that would be weird.
It would be strange, wouldn't it? Yeah.
But I just know that there's going to be some sort of campaign, whether that's co-op or not, that will have hopefully an engaging story, and that's where I can get excited about that Metroid universe, because at the moment it's lacking that.
It's just lacking character. It seems so like the art style is not standing out. It's not anything special. It's so generic, and I don't know. It's not getting me that excited. It's the sort of thing where, hey, this will be really fun online playing with people. But then you step back and you say, wait a second, if you think about it, every video game is like that. Every video game is more fun cooperatively online, no matter what it is. If it's the worst thing in the world or if it's this incredible AAA experience. And, you know, you made the Evolve comparison earlier. Look at Evolve now. Like, that thing is dead in the water. People are not playing it. And that is a huge AAA, ridiculously well-marketed thing on current-gen systems which millions and millions of people own. And you take a look at this thing and it's like, well, it's on a system where most people don't want this kind of game. And a lot of people aren't going to be connected online as much as Xbox and PS4 are. And it's not the sort of experience Nintendo fans are after. Plus, you add in the kind of animosity because it's not really a true Metroid game. This community for online, I don't think is going to last very long or be stable at all. So trying to find even 4 people to play it with, probably going to be a challenge, you know? That's worrying because, you know, Splatoon is going well so far, but that's also a thing where it's you can just jump in of your own accord and not have to worry about getting together a group of like-minded people who want to cooperate because it is, you know, competitive. So who knows what will happen with this?
And like, just with the whole internet reaction to this game, it's just been unbelievable. And they've even mentioned it hilariously in one of the Treehouse lives. I think it was Eric Peterson before it started. He just sort of says, as they're starting, I should say, he says, "Oh yeah, we hear that this game's been getting a lot of talk online. Like that's really good." Like, it's like no, you're so
not all PR is good PR.
Like you cannot spin this. It's just not gonna work. You just shouldn't have mentioned it at all. And
yeah,
likewise,
they shouldn't have done.
In an interview, Reggie, where I guess he obviously did have to address the issue more head on because he was asked the question, and I think he said, what was the quotation? It was something like, "I don't think our fans have understood."
Right, I think he was saying that, you know, we're hearing that maybe we could have better explained things like Metroid Prime Federation.
Yes, like I don't think any explanation.
I do agree with him. I do agree in the sense that they gave us 10 seconds of this thing, said Metroid, and then we're like, fuck off.
Yeah,
we're,
no, you're
like,
right.
leaving you with nothing.
That's true.
So they could have done a way better job in the digital event of making people be like, okay, tell us what this thing actually is, instead of moving on after 15 seconds. But also, yeah, people are just mad about it, so he can't really say anything other than that. What are you going to do? So yeah, interesting concept, and we'll see what happens, and hopefully we'll learn more, as you said, about that kind of campaign-based stuff. But next thing was Zelda Triforce Heroes, which continues to look pretty fun and something that we'll enjoy playing. Although I am wary of the fact that I don't think it's going to be available to just 2 players. I think you have to either be single player or 3 players, which is a little bit silly, I think.
We'll be doing job applications for that role in a few months. So
yes, yeah, you can apply. ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com.
Yep, that would be
to be our third player.
To be our third.
So yeah, Bally, what do you think? You know, putting all that stuff aside, of the gameplay you saw of this game.
Really positive. I think that I was initially worried that it all looked a bit easy, but then by the end I was like, wow, this is really tough, and like you really have to be on point with coordination and making
I
sure...
question that, though. I think that people are just bad at coordinating. The game didn't look very difficult at all. In terms of the puzzle solving, it seemed simple. In terms of the enemies, like, okay, but I think it was more the fault of people playing than the game being that difficult. And I think if it was someone like me and you and whoever else we get on board, we could take shit down like that pretty easily, because coordination doesn't seem like something that's that difficult. They weren't really communicating at all in the Treehouse, which was like this should be simple, and they're not really helping each other. It's a little bit silly.
Yeah, and I did cringe when Audrey Drake said, yeah, the fact that we don't have voice chat online, like that's to really emphasize to use these logos, and that's part of the puzzle that you have to coordinate with your team. And I was like, Sigh. Like, why would you say that? Like, don't
yeah, why are you trying to spin no voice chat as a positive?
Yeah, it's just that they're trying to spin just some of the worst elements they're getting criticized for as positives. It's like, if you were a politician, you'd just try and shove these under the rug. You wouldn't address them in the way they're doing. It's mental that they're trying to do this, and it's suicidal ultimately. It's a really bad idea, and I was so positive about the Treehouse live events last year, but this year there've been definitely good elements, but there have been some that are just I feel used and abused watching them. I'm like, this is not what I'm into like Nintendo games for. Like, I don't think it's a good precedent, but that's for a different conversation, I'm sure.
Yeah. But yeah, that game looks good. It looks fun, and I mean, there wasn't really anything new that we didn't hear about, because this was one of the games they explained pretty well in the digital event, so they didn't need to do that much more explaining about it. They talked about the different suits and how you can use those, and they seem cool and different and interesting. Yeah, we'll play it, so we'll get to that eventually.
I think the music is really good, actually. Like, really good.
Well, it's a Zelda game, Bally. Of course it's going to be good music.
But so. I don't know. I think that, like, Link Between Worlds soundtrack was a step above many Zeldas, and I think this one is up there with it.
All right. Well, that's good to know. That's always a benefit. We like good music. So the next thing, let's talk a little bit about Fire Emblem Fates. Obviously, Bally, you kind of impulse bought Fire Emblem Awakening recently and planning to play it at some point soon.
I look forward to that.
So yeah, well, I want to get your thoughts on Fates here. I mean, there was nothing shown that I didn't really know about already, but anything that stood out to
you? It's interesting that there are actually points where you can walk around your castle and, you know, like, interact with the buildings and things. Did you see that?
Yeah, it's the My Castle, My Whatever portion of the game where you can do relationship stuff and, like, inventory management and whatever.
Yeah.
And apparently for online battles you can, like, set up your team for that, because apparently there's going to be online Fire Emblem Awakening, like, Wi-Fi battles, which is weird. And maybe that'll be an interesting thing to try out, but who knows. Yeah, I don't know. Nothing else really.
I mean, I'm pretty positive about it, but I think I'll need to go back and check out some of the stuff they've said about it once I've played Awakening, because I think that when you compare it to a game like Fire Emblem 7, the only one I've sort of completed, I think it looks completely different, and it's quite hard to relate the two.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, we're looking forward to that. It's going to come next year, and it's already out in Japan, so I hate everyone who can speak Japanese and has imported it, because goddamn.
But hey, we got Yoshi.
Yeah, we did. I'm just going to quickly touch on Shin Megami Tensei Cross Fire Emblem, which Bally has lovingly labeled Shitty Shin Megami in our show notes. I wanted to know more about this game because, as everyone realized during the digital event, they basically were like, hey, here's Japan in trailer in 3 minutes, and people were like, what the fuck was that? What just happened?
Here's 3 minutes of Japan injected into your eyeballs.
Yeah, basically. So I watched the Treehouse segment on it, and it was really positive for me because I had suspicions that this game was basically Persona, and now I know that this game literally is just Persona. So, you know how positive I was on Persona 4 Golden earlier this year, Bally. This is going to be fucking... I'm down for this.
I only realized, like, a few weeks ago that Shin Megami and Persona are, like, spin-offs of one another or something.
Right, well, Shin Megami Tensei is the main series, and then Persona was a spin-off of it, but at this point Persona is so huge that it's basically eclipsed the thing that it came from. It's kind of like Mario Kart from Mario. Like, Mario Kart is this massive thing, and, you know, Mario's still big and stuff, but, like, that has kind of gone on its own trajectory, and Persona's done pretty much the exact same thing. So, yes, there's a lot of anime, there's a lot of bubblegum and fucking pop singing, and what it seems like is the relationship system is kind of more built around getting to know these people and their career paths in terms of, like, they all want to be on TV or in films or, like, as a pop star and stuff like that, and you try and help them get and make their wishes and dreams come true, essentially. And that's kind of the more social element of it, and the kind of dungeon crawling stuff is very Persona, where you go through places and you fight enemies, and the battle system is kind of a mix of Fire Emblem and Persona, where you're exploiting weaknesses, but there's also the weapon triangle to keep in mind. So yeah, loads of crazy stuff happening with it. I'm super looking forward to that, and I hope it turns out good, because it looks like my sort of thing after playing Persona earlier this year. So we will look forward to that. Well, I will look forward to it, and Bally will continue to ignore it, as he has continued to do so. Then a couple of indie stuff that was shown on the Treehouse that we really enjoyed. There's basically an F-Zero game coming to Wii U, because Nintendo refuses to make one. It's called Fast Racing Neo, and it looks really cool.
I think
you were pretty impressed by
we
this.
were watching this together, and I don't know his name, but we thought he was German, the developer on that game, and he is like the most refreshing PR guy I've ever seen. And like if you haven't seen this video, I'd highly recommend it, because he is just. I don't want to sound harsh. He's unintentionally funny, but he knows that he's kind of funny. If that makes sense. Yeah. And he was just sort of cracking jokes with the guys from Treehouse, saying, "Oh, you're not doing well enough. You're not very good, and like you need to go faster. You need to do that." And it sounds really lame what I'm saying right now, but yeah. I thought he made that game. I think he did make that game, but I think it worked really well. And I'm excited for that game, regardless of him. I think I'd like to give it a go. Assuming it doesn't get panned by reviewers, but judging by what it looks like so far, it won't.
And man, it was quick. It was so fast.
Yeah, and he really made a point of saying, yeah, like you were about go for it. I interrupted you. I'm so excited about this game, I can't contain myself. But yeah.
No, yeah, he was saying, because basically he was like, yeah, let's play on the slowest speed for this Treehouse. And we were both like, wow, this is pretty quick. And then we just realized, wait a second, he said we're playing on the slowest speed right now, and there are 2 speeds above it. Yeah.
The guy was failing, and then this developer says to the guy from Treehouse, like, you're failing right now, but imagine if we made it faster, like, joking, and you're just thinking, what? So, yeah, it was great fun. And I do think that's a real strength of Treehouse Live, is when they do bring in the more external developers, and not just, the Nintendo spokesperson.
Right.
Again, that's when it does feel a bit fresher and more natural and more fun.
Yeah, and a similar thing happened with SteamWorld Heist, which was also shown, another game that I'm looking forward to as a big fan of SteamWorld Dig. So Brian from Image and Form was on the stage, and I think you would enjoy watching this as well, because he's kind of in a similar vein to the dude who was showing off Fast Racing Neo. He's very passionate and loves his game, and always kind of making jokes and stuff like that. So that's a good one to watch, Bally. I recommend you go take a look at that. But that game is really interesting because it's turn-based strategy, but it's also skill-based in the sense that you have to aim your shots at your enemies instead of relying on an RPG kind of metric and number system. So it's super cool. You should check that one out. Recommend a lot of people go look at it. And it's really refreshing. And I like the fact that they didn't take the traditional route of being okay, this thing we did was successful, let's make a sequel. It's no, we'll keep the same universe, but we're going to go a completely different direction, to a completely different genre, and I'm really excited for it. So SteamWorld Heist, want to keep a lookout for. And yeah, there's other stuff that was shown, stuff like Bravely Second, which I haven't had a chance to look at yet, and Mario & Luigi Paper Jam, which neither of us got to watch. But I'll have a look at those over the coming days, and I'm sure there'll be some interesting stuff there, but probably nothing that groundbreaking happening with those 2 titles, because they seem very derivative of their previous entries anyway. So yeah, overall, pretty good stuff. Bally, how do you feel about that stuff at the Treehouse? Do you think they should have taken more care to explain this stuff in the digital event, or was it okay being external?
I can see the argument that it can be very difficult to explain a lot of the stuff that they were explaining in the digital event.
Especially when you have kind of a limited time frame.
Yeah, exactly. But then on the opposite end of the spectrum, you're absolutely right. What we saw of Federation Force in the digital event was just rubbing salt into an open wound. It was just horrible. I think Federation Force is looking like a decent game, but that was terribly bad marketing. And I think that in general, the Treehouse live events are strong in explaining games. And this is, like I said, this is a conversation for another time, but the journalistic element of it is completely lacking. And
that's because they're not journalists, they're
exactly.
PR people. They're trying to sell you a game, and that is why places that we read and watch videos from and listen to podcasts from are way more valuable, because you can go and listen to Johnny Metz on RFN and tell you what he really thought of this game that Nintendo showed without any of that kind of bollocks over the top of it, and get a real opinion from people that we trust and know have, good thoughts. So yeah, always a place for the media. Treehouse Live is great, but don't trust everything they say, because they're trying to sell you a fucking video game. So
yeah,
there you go.
I agree, and I'm sure it's something that they see as a success and will keep coming back. And I think it is a success in general. I'm just worried in many ways, but it is what it is.
There's many things to be worried about when it comes to Nintendo. Might as well throw another one on the pile. Okay, so that is pretty much going to close out our show for this week. Thank you, Bally, for joining me as always. And we are going to be back in a couple of weeks' time to talk about The Legend of Zelda, the Minish Cap. Because, ladies and gentlemen, yes, it has come time for our first ever Backlog Club. We've been telling you about it for a while, and hopefully you have been playing along. If not, you still have 2 weeks to play The Legend of Zelda, the Minish Cap. And
it's not a long Zelda. You can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Bally's already finished it. I'm quite close to the end, making my way through the final stages. And yeah, we've both been enjoying it, and we're going to have a good long discussion. That's going to be a feature-long kind of hour segment next time. So if you have emails, if you have thoughts on The Legend of Zelda Minish Cap, now is the time to send them in. So email all of your opinions on the Minish Cap to our email address. Where can they send that stuff, Bally?
Please send all your Minish Cap related ideas to ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com.
Yes, we look forward to that. We have a couple. We'd like to get some more, and you can also tweet your thoughts at us.
Use the hashtag Backlog Club if you just want to chat about it. We'll be reading out a lot of the tweets from that hashtag.
And that Twitter account is at TNL Podcast, so follow that and talk to us about Minish Cap, and hopefully we'll get good conversation.
Looking forward to it.
There.
That'll be good. Really excited that this is our first, Backlog Club, new segment.
It'll be good.
Here we go.
So, yes, you can find us on the internet and other places. I'm at Lordnbz on Twitter, also my name on the Miiverse. What about you, Bally?
I'm at Ballyman91, BALLYMAN91. Hopefully what am I going to tweet about? We'll see. Probably about Spain.
Yeah, probably about just lying in the sun and having a great time and making everyone jealous, so that'll be good for people. I'm going to be posting stuff on Yoshi on Miiverse. I've already posted quite a few things, and that game is great fun, just getting started with it, and we'll be talking about that next time as well. So Yoshi is going to be the next big game from Nintendo, and unfortunately a lot of you Americans won't be able to play it for 3 months, but hey, at least you can listen to us wax lyrical about it as compensation.
I'm sure that'll make you feel better about it.
Oh, I'm sure, absolutely. Also, if you want to hear more of Bally and myself talking about E3 and our sort of calm down thoughts, head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the Nintendo Show podcast. That's with our friend John, who was on here a couple of months ago for our first guest spot, and we guested over there for his E3 show. So that's a big, long, meaty discussion, about 2 hours, and we really get in depth and talk about a lot of issues. So go ahead and listen to the Nintendo Show. You can find that on iTunes, as I said before, give him a rating, a listen, a review, all that good stuff. We appreciate that. That's pretty much us. You can find us on iTunes, you can find us on Stitcher, you can find us on YouTube, loads of different places. This Nintendo Life, just look us up and we will be on the internet. Thank you for listening, and we will be back at you in a couple of weeks' time. Till then, goodbye.
Bye.
musical interludes used in today's show were a cover of the Wolven Storm from The Witcher 3, copyright CD Projekt Red 2015, and a metal cover of Gangplank Galleon from Donkey Kong Country, copyright Nintendo and Rare 1994.
I still can't work out the name of that doo-wop band.
I do-wop, do-wop, I do-wop, shoo-wop.